Good evening. My name is Darren Alexander. I'm a junior econ major sociology minor from Morehouse College. And today I have the pleasure of introducing Honorable Morris L. Overstreet. With a degree in sociology and minors in biology and chemistry from Angelo State University, Judge Overstreet received his Juris Doctor degree from Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University. From there, he will go on to accomplish a plethora of achievements in his legal work while being the first African American in Texas history to be elected to a statewide office and the second to sit in one of two highest courts in the state, the Texas Criminal Court of Appeals. In his career, he has authored over 500 decisions and served as influence to many Supreme Court decisions. After returning to his alma mater as a distinguished visiting professor of law, he continues to teach legal educational classes across the country for county judges, justice of peace, local bar associations, and the National Bar Association. This merely scratches the surface of his great works, but please help me in honoring Honorable Judge Morris Overstreet.
Well, maybe just a few words. You all have to be some of the luckiest people in the world. I'm going to tell you my story. Unlike Ms. Jones, I didn't grow up wanting to be a lawyer. I grew up wanting to be a doctor. That's why I majored in biology and sociology. Back then, there were not a lot of options for African Americans. I didn't have a lot of, let's say, role models. I only knew one African American lawyer in my hometown of Amarillo, Texas. But I knew 3 doctors, so I wanted to be a doctor. After my sophomore year, there was some little requirement you had to go talk to the medical societies. So I decided to go to the medical society there in Tom Green County, San Angelo, Texas, and they asked me why I wanted to be a doctor, and I told them. The next question I asked was, well, why do you want to be a doctor? He says, your father a doctor? I said, no. They said, well, why do you want to be a doctor? So I told him again. The next question was, well, do you have an uncle who's a doctor? I said, no, but my mother's a nurse. They said, well, why do you want to be a doctor? And then I figured it out. That profession was reserved for the sons and nephews, not daughters and nieces of doctors, but for the sons and nephews of doctors. I became very angry. Went back to college. I had some firebrand professors from the West Coast. That was a time of the year when Harry Edwards was had a doctorate in sociology, Tommy Smith, and John Carlos had been put out of Mexico City for raising their gloved hands. I was a student athlete. The only thing I knew about getting into law school was they said you had to take the LSAT test. Nobody said you had to pass it. Nobody told me you had to make a high grade. So I figured out, I was a student athlete. I was a great athlete. And so I was running in the Houston Astrodome, and I figured out they were giving the LSAT in Houston. So I talked the track coach into allowing me to borrow the station wagon, went over to the University of Houston, took the LSAT, but still watching my watch because I knew I had a heat to run in the high hurdles. I can't believe this now. I didn't even finish the test because I needed to get back to the Astrodome to run. But nobody told me you had to pass it and make a high grade. Somehow, without even finishing the test, I applied to Texas Southern and got in. Now, you all are lucky because you have so many advisors. So many people showing you the way, telling you what you need to do, encouraging you to do it. But I was driven. I decided I was going to be the best lawyer that one could ever be. And when I graduated law school, I went back to my hometown of Amarillo, and I became an assistant district attorney. All of my classmates said, man, you have sold out. You've gone to the other side. But I figured it out. I could do with the stroke of a pen in less than 30 seconds what they couldn't do in trial all week. I could right a wrong and see that justice was done. And so since 1975, I've been pursuing justice and defending liberty as a prosecutor, as a trial judge, as a private practitioner. And then I was elected a judge in my hometown of Amarillo, first African-American elected countywide, Potter County, home of John Birch Society. And then I decided that no matter how fair I could be in my courtroom, by the luck of the draw, if you're in my courtroom, you're okay. And so I said, I'm going to run statewide. Nobody told me that no one had ever done it before. No one told me that I couldn't do it. But I had a lot of people who helped me, folks in this room who helped me. My colleague, Mr. Washington, and some of his helped me. I had a dream. And again, I got lucky. I campaigned all over the state of Texas. Some of my best friends didn't believe I could win. But they said afterwards, you were so committed, we just didn't want to tell you that we did not expect you to win. But I did win. And I became the first African-American elected to statewide office in the history of Texas. Along the way, many of you know Thurgood Marshall of the U.S. Supreme Court, Gabriel McDonald, the first African-American federal district judge in Texas. They didn't hire a lot of African-Americans as their law clerks. And someone asked them, why didn't they? And they said, we need people who can write. And then someone said, if Howard University is good enough for the judge, why can't Howard be good enough for the law clerk? And so I set about my business of hiring African Americans to serve as clerks, research attorneys, briefing attorneys, interns on the Texas Court of Criminal Appeals. And before I got there, that court was 100 years old, and not a single African American lawyer had ever worked for that court. But I changed that in a hurry, and nobody had to tell me to do that. And it was a safe haven for lawyers, African-American lawyers, not only from Texas Southern, but from University of Texas. No matter where they went to school, if they wanted to come clerk in my chambers, they could. And I want to end with this story. When I took my oath of office, there were 8 white guys, 1 black guy, me. And they eventually said, well, you can't get a job in Overstreet's chamber unless you're black. And I told those other 8 judges, I said, well, I'll tell you what, if you recommend some white law students, I will certainly look at them. But while y'all on this diversity kick, let me ask you this question. Why don't you all hire some African-American lawyers to work in your chambers? And so we changed it. And I saw the first lady who ever served as a research attorney, a briefing attorney on the Texas Supreme Court. She was in the room. There she is back there. Okay, there he is, Gwen. First female to serve as a briefing attorney on the Texas Supreme Court. So I want to thank you all for this award. I'm glad to be in your Hall of Fame. I'll not let you down. I'll keep doing what I'm going to do. But what I want you to do is to make sure that you always pursue justice, defend liberty at all costs. And when you have an opportunity to help someone who looks like you, help them. Pull them up. I didn't say pull up the ladder. I said pull them up and help them. God bless you and thank you.